Have you ever had your thoughts hijacked? As in, I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to think about this. Just cruising along, and then that thing pops in. Maybe it's a small thing like a conversation, maybe a difficult conversation that's pending that we should have but I don't want to have. Or maybe it's like some memory. I have a friend who is dealing with a court situation, didn't want to drive by the courthouse because it reminded him of that thing. Totally understandable, right? No big deal, right? But the truth is, those things are quietly stealing our energy, killing our joy, and sooner or later, our health, physical health. So, if we get really honest about it, rather than dumbing it down, literally killing us. Okay, so that's a pleasing promise, right? A fun topic, Daniel. Well, I'm going to show you in this video, one, how that works, but two, way more importantly, what you can do instead. And I promise you, if you take this on and apply it in your life, it will radically change the rest of your life. So I'll give you a little example of how I did this. And by the way, this is part of how I know this dynamic really well. Is I've been expert in it, and it's up right now because I've seen it into 3 different clients in the last week dealing with this. Same kind of issue in different scenarios. Now my first big example of this that I'm aware of was all the way back in 1997. I had just completed my first season working at Omega Institute on the summer staff, seasonal staff, which means they gave me a place to put my tent, food, and some classes, and I worked 30 hours a week. Now, a lot of my peers were like, they're just getting free labor. Me, I was like a kid in a candy store. This is the best deal ever. Turns out maybe I was taking advantage, but we'll come back to that. In any case, at the end of my first season there, I was so happy, like so fulfilled, getting to study and being around amazing people and learning from the top luminaries in the world. So at the end of my first season, it's a 6-month season, 6 months off. I was like, I'm coming back, absolutely, for sure. Bought myself a little RV, camper van, traveled around the U.S. during the off season, had a cool gig where I could make and save a bunch of money, did that, went and visited my friend Kate in Colorado for the holy days at the turn of the year. And this was back in the days, you may remember, some of you, and it was before cell phones, and it was when I had a answering service. So I used Kate's phone. It was on the counter. I picked it up, and I called some number, and I got my messages. And I got a message from the director of hiring, human resources at Omega, and the message was, I'm sorry, we're not going to be hiring you back next season. I was devastated. What? And Kate was right there. So I told Kate what happened. She's like, dude, what did you do? How do you get fired from a job that you don't even get paid for? I was like, yeah, good question. So what I noticed, though, in that moment, because some months before I had one of my biggest awakenings ever, and I learned about transformational breath. And one of the key aspects I learned is that when we don't want to feel, don't feel safe to feel, what do? We stop breathing. Now, everybody learns this capacity early on. It's a survival technique. My favorite way of explaining it is, it's like, have you ever done this? Taken a beach ball and hold it underwater? How long can you do it? Pretty long time, right? You could take a beach ball, hold it underwater for a long time. However, there are a couple key aspects to this. One, sooner or later, it's going to come to the surface. Two, it takes some attention and it takes some energy to do that, right? Now, it's the same thing when we don't feel something, consciously or unconsciously, repression or suppression, whether we don't feel safe or we don't want to, whatever the reason, right? And there was a time in our life when we were young where it's like, fear or anger or something was going on. It produced so much emotion in us, it wasn't safe. So we, in that stage of our life, we needed to push it down. Okay, cool, good survival tool, not a useful thriving tool. However, a lot of us, especially those of us that had traumas early on, we developed this capacity. Not going to feel, not going to feel, not going to feel. Became a habit. So when I discovered breath work, another story for another time, and I realized this pattern, right? And so much of what therapeutic types of breath work are about are actually getting ourselves to feel the thing, right? And if we can feel it, we can let it go. So we breathe in such a way, often bigger breathing, faster breathing, connected breathing, so that the thing that's pushed down, the emotion, comes up to the surface and it can be released. Cool, really useful. That's why it's so cathartic and for many, many people, life-changing, biggest experience of their life. And even better, it can train us such that when something happens and we have that reflex of, no, I don't want this to happen, I don't want to feel this, we can train ourselves to say, oh, no, actually, it's okay. I can feel it. And in fact, I can keep breathing because now I have the resources to be able to handle that. Right? So I learned this in my head, and then I got an opportunity to practice it. So I'm standing there at the edge of the kitchen living room where Kate says, what did you do? And I realized suddenly I could feel my breath was constricting. And I was like, oh, I don't want to feel this. I'm upset. I'm sad. So then I remembered the words of my breathwork teacher. And I said, okay, let's try something different. What if instead I just simply go, I welcome this feeling. Bring it on. Right? So I was like, okay, I will breathe into it. So I started breathing with the attitude of let's go, let's feel it. Holy moly, y'all. I was in seconds, a few breaths, on my knees, a couple seconds more, sobbing, like the feeling was so intense. Okay, I feel things deeply, but I had no idea what could be like that. Now, it was not pretty. It did not feel good. However, it was quick. And here's the big lesson, and put it in capital letters here. If we intentionally welcome and allow ourselves to feel things that are difficult, painful, intentionally, for a purpose, for a short time, we save eons, ages of dis-ease and emotional numbness. So, did it solve everything? Did I get the job from doing it? No. However, it did give me space, right? And watch children, like especially little children, before they start learning how to control things and regulate themselves to please others. What happens for children oftentimes is they feel something really fully, and then it goes, right? They feel it and then they let it go. We have the capacity to not feel something and keep it repressed for days, weeks, months, years, decades. So, for me, what happened then, I had this intense feeling of pain and then it went away, right? Like, or at least, no, it didn't go away. More accurate is, I got space from it. And then in that space, I turned to Kate and I was like, yeah, that was a great question. How could that even happen? I was like, well, I'm going to find out. So I reached out. I called the hiring director. John Berryhill is his name. I remember it well. And I said, hey, John, I heard your message and how did that happen? Like, something must have happened that I'm not aware of. And he told me, and it's not worth me going into the story of that right now, but I had some behaviors that created some impacts which were not what I wanted amongst some of my coworkers. I wasn't aware that I'd done it. However, when John told me, I was like, oh, yeah, I could see how I unwittingly did that. And then I was able to say to him, I get it. Yeah, I see how I created that in ways. He said to me, 20-something years I've been here, you're the very first person that's actually taken some responsibility. I wasn't the first person to get fired from a job where you don't get paid. Did he give me the job back? No, he didn't. However, in a few weeks' time, he gave me a probationary job. Yes, I was on probation at a non-paying job, and I was thrilled and happy about it, right? So, but let's look at a couple of key points about this beach ball situation. What we don't feel. It's affecting us whether we are aware of it or not. How's it affecting us? One, it takes energy. And if you imagine us like a electrical system, because we are, and let's just say we have 100 volts of capacity. That's full life force that we can bring to any moment. And there's a situation where I got fired from some job and I felt really bad about it, but I didn't want to feel the emotion, so I pushed it down. Well, maybe that takes me 3 volts of energy to keep that down. And maybe when I was 2 years old, my parents were yelling and screaming at each other, and that was really scary for me, and that fear I pressed down. Maybe that's 5 volts of energy, right? You could see what happens takes energy, and we lose our capacity for being present and fully engaged. What else happens, right? When we say no or limit any emotion, we limit all emotions. It just doesn't work as human beings that we can say, I don't want to feel any sadness, but I want to feel lots of joy. No. The amount of joy we can feel is relative to the amount of sadness we can feel. Right? Being able to feel anger is not the same, by the way, as express it out onto others. Right? Feeling something and the behavior can be very different. What else? Right? Because that beach ball has to come up sooner or later, you could look at it this way. Our wisdom, our body, the life force is constantly saying, psst, yo, dude, you need to feel that thing. Remember that thing way back then? Maybe you don't even remember it. It's still there. You need to feel it. And to the degree that we keep going, no, I'm not going to feel it. Don't drive by there because it's going to remind me of that thing. To the degree that we do that, it gets more persistent. What we can't be with won't let us be. What we resist shall persist. So if we don't pay attention, higher self is going to get our attention. Usually that happens through some kind of, I think in language of Pluto, pain, trauma, crisis, drama, disease, crisis. Something happens. It's like, okay. And that underlying energy comes up. Now, Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, said something beautiful. And that is, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And if we apply that here, what it means is whatever that thing is that's coming up, right, that interrupting thought, that like, no, I don't want to pay attention, that's the way, right? And if we instead face toward it instead of away from it, it becomes an advancement of all that we want and want to create in our lives, right? So for my friend that was avoiding the courthouse, the possibility is to say, and you don't even have to go by the courthouse, just think of it, right, for him, right? There's some situation that's painful, difficult. Okay, well, I don't want to feel it. What happens if I open up to feeling it? It's not going to feel good. I get it, right? 3 ways of looking at mastery in life: awareness, release, and creation. And everybody knows about awareness. Of course you need that, right? That's part of why meditation and breathing and so many of the practices are valuable. Creation, a lot of people in the New Age are good at that part, writing down intentions, vision board, mind movies, writing goals. Yes. Very few people are focused on and good at the release part, right? And what does that mean? It means feeling, right? Opening up the feeling. It can be compassionate self-forgiveness, the work of Byron Katie. Michael Singer speaks about this well, right? And one more way of looking at it that's helpful. I love this. There's an MMA fighter whose name I forget. A friend of mine was coaching him. World renowned, like one of the best in the world. One of the reasons is because this dude trained himself to smile when punched. What? Smile when punched. So, MMA, mixed martial arts, right? This dude would get punched in the face, and by the time his opponent would pull their hand or foot or whatever away, what they would see in the guy's face was a smile. How scary is that? Like, this guy gets pain and he likes it. Almost like saying, is that all you got? Picture Captain Dan in Forrest Gump. Bring it on. Is that all you got? And that's a great mantra. Bring it on. Bring it on. I can handle it, whatever it is. So our possibility is to become trigger happy. Trigger happy? What does that mean? Well, trigger is a common word these days. That triggered me. She triggered me. He triggered me. And what we often miss is we say, that's a trigger for me. And then the conclusion is, well, I'm going to stay away from that. Watch out for the triggers. A greater understanding is like, it's triggering something inside of me. It's already inside of me. In yoga terminology, it's a samskara, right? And what does that mean? It means something I haven't felt, dealt with, healed, integrated, loved. And so it's still there. It's calling. So we create situations in the outside that bring it up. All right. So what is that? Oh, hey, look at that. I didn't mean to do that. What does that mean in actual action for us? Right? It means, okay, there we go. It means doing things a little different. I have a good friend who is right on the edge of having a big celebration for his family, with his wife, but he's kind of avoiding it because he has the sense that he's going to invite his daughter and she won't come. And so to have an event like this where his wife's children and other friends and those people all come, but his daughter doesn't come, it's just too painful to him. Understandable, right? And I feel for him. However, the impediment to action advances action. Here's cool, mysterious force. If he says, okay, you know what? Whether she comes or not, that's secondary. This is inside me. I have the possibility to feel and heal, to integrate this, to love this, to allow it up. And yeah, of course it's going to hurt. However, if we're willing to face it, to open up to it, it will move. And we can't do that in order to create movement in the other person. However, it always happens. It only takes one person to change a dynamic. So, bringing it all together. What does it mean for you to be trigger happy? Well, you don't have to go looking for ants at the picnic. You don't have to go looking around for problems. You know how it is. If there are things that you keep thinking about, things that you avoid, courthouse, children, situations, I don't want to deal with this, conversation to be had. First step is just to say, you know what, avoiding it's not working me, it's shrinking, not working for me, it's shrinking me. So let's breathe into it. Bring it on. Let's face it. And that might mean just taking an action to have a conversation. And one of my favorite things in the world, having learned this, not in my own childhood and not in my early life, later on, to be able to come to someone and say, hey, can we speak? Can I share something with you? I've got this thing going on inside me. I take ownership. I've got this thing going on inside me, and I'm making up these stories, and I'm putting this stuff in between us, and I don't want to do that, and I feel really awkward, and I don't know how to talk about this, but would it be okay if I just spoke about a little bit of this stuff that I got going on because I don't want it to be in the way? Did you see what I did? I sounded like an idiot, right? I was wringing out my apron. I was disclaiming. I was saying, this is awkward for me, but it's important to me. Because you're important to me. Because this relationship is important to me. Because being free is important to me. Right? None of us need to move through life avoiding anything. You've got the capacity to feel it, to work with it. So I hope that this makes sense. I hope it's useful. I would love to know how you relate to this. You can ask a question, make a comment, and I look forward to reading, to seeing, to responding. Thank you for tuning in. I love you. Aloha.